Welcome to The Forge Focus, a podcast through The Forge, where we focus on our mission of enhancing manhood through our three pillars of positive imagery, quality fellowship, and service to others. These three pillars were created to help fight toxic masculinity and promote a healthy aspect of manhood. Here we will have personal discussions with men in the community and beyond who exemplify this mission and can share their experiences and perspectives in efforts to make us all just a little better than we were before listening in. I mean, hey, let's face it, we can all learn from each other, right? And now, your host, Ebony McNeil. Prepare to be forged.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode 10 of the Forge Focus podcast, where, as you know, we take our mission and our focus of the Forge, and we try to take what we do in our large group settings and we actually reach out to men in the community and beyond who exemplify our mission. So I'm not going to go much longer into that because you've been here by now. It's episode 10. So I want to introduce someone to you guys who I admire quite a bit, who has impacted my life in the short amount of time I've known him. And it's been great watching him, his growth, understanding his story. A good friend of mine named Erik Vanzant. He is the state organizer for an amazing organization called Reform Alliance. I'm going to back off and let him tell you a little bit about himself so you can see why he's so special and why he's here on the episode today. Thanks for being here, Erik.
I appreciate that introduction, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm the state organizer for the Reform Alliance. That's how we met. And
yep.
I'm happy about that, man. Just as happy as you are. I appreciate that. Just recognizing quality individuals. And that's not something that you are fortunate to get around all the time. And so day one that we met, how that happened was you're a grant recipient, of course, for the Reform Alliance. We have a national community grant project that we do. I think it's in the spring. And there's plenty of organizations, grassroots, especially around the state, that apply for grants. And of course, you're a recipient. So that's how we met. My regional director said, hey, why don't you stop in on this guy? He's doing this program called The Forge, something I was unfamiliar with. Stopped in, was really not taken aback, but just blown away, impressed by something that I wasn't familiar with. But then when I sat in, I said, I don't need to look any further or listen any further. It's a quality individual doing something that was impactful. So that's how we met. And that was something that when I walked away from that conversation, it was easy for me to come back to. As a state organizer, I move around the state. I work in an advocacy space for probation reform legislation. Right now, we have a bill, Senate Bill 838 for probation reform that I've been moving around the state trying to, enroll people into this conversation if they weren't already about probation reform. What does that look like? Who's on probation? What kind of stories do you have when you're on probation? How has it affected you in your life? And so that's what I've been doing and meeting people, maybe not your caliber. I mean, I don't mind putting that out there, but good folks. And there's some folks that are in a different position. They might be taking the lead like you do, or they might be in a more kind of ancillary role, helping someone that's on probation or in this arena. So that's what I've been finding out as I've been traveling around the state. I've been the state organizer for reform since February of 23. Something I really appreciate doing. And in June, I just took over the directorship for the Pennsylvania Safety Coalition, which is a coalition of groups that are in this advocacy space, whether it's in the mental health field, reentry based, and a lot of grassroots organizations are involved in the Safety Coalition, bipartisan organization, and just something that I really appreciate when everybody gets together and we can share that space, trying to get to, a place where we can recognize our power together, which is really important.
Nice. So as you know, I'm a huge advocate of your organization. I mean, shoot, this is literally the first time on my podcast I haven't worn a forward shirt. I'm wearing a reform shirt.
Appreciate it, man.
Because I just believe in it so much.
You good, man.
Hey, thank you, bro.
Nice and snug.
Slim down to a large, you know what I'm saying? I had to go do that. You know what I mean?
Nah, you look good, man.
Thanks, bro. But so that they understand why, obviously, like you said, we were a grant recipient, and I will always be grateful because you were the first large organization to believe in us and help support our vision. But other than that, I just really like what the organization stands for. So can you dive into that so our listeners understand what reform is? Like,
certainly,
what's the,
man.
and how it got started is really cool.
It got started in a way that you really aren't going to see a large organization get started. It got started by an African-American young man, Meek Mills, who was just being railroaded in the system, which is not unlike what happens to a lot of young African-American men. So in Philadelphia, he had an issue with a particular judge who was just taking him through it. Don't need to really get into it in too much detail about those particulars, but what he did is he said, you know what, enough's enough. And I have friends, I have people that respect me, I have people that appreciate what I'm going through and how I'm being marginalized and disenfranchised. And fortunately, a movement started, the Free Meek movement started in Philly. So Meek, Michael Rubin, Robert Kraft from the New England Patriots, Jay-Z got together, formed the Reform Alliance. I think early on, Van Jones, Jessica Jackson, Erin Haney, these are folks that were commandeering the reform.
That's some heavy hitters.
Absolutely. And so that kind of power in this arena, if you will, right? It says something. It says something to folks about influence, and it says something about what's really, I guess, a passionate issue for folks. And how can we bring attention to it? And you know what? I got a bunch of people that are bringing attention to it. These are attention-getting people with power. And now what do you do with it? You make sure folks like yourself get something out of it. You make sure folks that are on probation get something out of it. People that shared the same experience that Meek shared, do they get something out of it? And that's where the legislation comes in. That's where the advocacy comes in. You make sure that you're not sitting up in some high-rise building out of touch with who really needs to benefit from your power. There can be some real misunderstandings from people about that. And you can be so far removed from the situation, from the actual issue, that you can't really appreciate it and the nuanced things around the issue. But when you have somebody like Meek Mills who is directly impacted and they're giving you the information, you're getting it from the horse's mouth. And so it's like, okay, now we want to put policies together. We want to introduce legislation that's going to help someone just like you. And so this is what reform does. We're talking about changing systems, changing the culture, changing perception, and we're really hoping that moving forward, enough people can appreciate what can be done collectively, and that's really important because you can't do it yourself. No matter how much power you have, you still have to incorporate. You still have to appreciate what's going on with folks that are not in your position. And so, okay, I'm listening. Yeah, I'm listening. Now what are you going to do? Are you still going to continue to do what you'd like to do? Or are you going to incorporate and really appreciate what's going on with us at this level? No, we're gonna fix it on this level as best we can. And that's what reform does. My understanding, my experience, that's where we are with it. The things that I'm talking about when I'm moving around the state, that's what I'm talking about. I'm listening and I'm trying to appreciate where somebody's coming from and meet them at their level and say, okay, I will incorporate this into our conversation and we will see how we can work together. So that's what reform is for me. That's how it started. And on a state organizing level, I mean, that's where I am.
Awesome. So, if you don't mind me asking, like, how did you wind up with reform? I mean, you could start from, so how did you find out about reform and become a part of it?
Actually, my friend used to be the secretary for the Board of Pardons.
Okay.
And so she was really connected in a political way, in an advocacy way for things going on in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm on the advisory council board for the Pennsylvania Prison Society. So there's conversations that I've been having. There's spaces that I've been in terms of networking and with folks that are in this some kind of capacity in criminal justice. 4 years ago, a little more than 4 years ago, July 2019, I walked out of prison. And so this is a conversation as a stakeholder, I guess, that is never far from me. Whether I'm actually in the conversation specifically about particular things, whether it has to do with probation or parole or the death penalty or commutation, things that surround criminal justice related issues is a conversation that I've been in. And so in my life, I'm like, you know what? So many of my friends are in position and we're in these conversations. You know, I'd like to make it official with me being engaged in a particular capacity where I can contribute as a stakeholder to the conversation. Now, that's not easy.
No.
Because how many opportunities are you going to find in this workspace where a company that is, or an organization that is a reputable organization that is actually doing something is going to hire you? Because a lot of organizations, they don't hire directly impacted people.
True story.
So matter of fact, I was on the advisory council for the Prison Society, and I applied for a job with the Prison Society. I couldn't even get an interview from the Prison Society, and I'm on the advisory council. They said, no. I said, what's the problem? They were like, we're moving in another direction. And the strange part was about 6 months after I couldn't get an interview, they still didn't fill the position. So I was like, all right. But in the meantime, sometimes we think that what's best for us, the decision that we're going to make, right, is the best thing for us. In actuality, what happened, I got a better situation.
Right. Usually that's what happens.
I found myself, well, I wish you would have told me this, man. So I found myself in a better situation. So my friend who I was alluding to earlier, she said, hey, you should check out Reform. I said, oh, okay. So I checked out Reform because I didn't know they were hiring for particular positions in Pennsylvania. Put my resume together, put the application in, got the interview, had great conversations with folks. And they were way more open to hiring someone who was directly impacted. In fact, they welcomed that. They're like, listen, your experience, your personal experience, your life experience is something that we appreciate. Because this organization was started by somebody who lived this experience.
Right.
You can't just like pencil somebody in.
It's crazy.
And expect a different result, you know? And
it's crazy. I'm listening to what you said. Like, your input was good enough to be on the advisory board. And they're supposed to be talking about that. But somebody who can actually lend credible experience, they still, but we don't really want the real information. We, like you said earlier, they're going by what they think, what they see, what they read. Instead of bringing you in who've experienced it, they're going to still hold back on that. And that's a shame, because that's what happens to a lot of people who are impacted. I mean, young men make decisions, and unfortunately that decision, people don't realize that can be a whole different person, because you're not the person you were 20, 30 years ago. But, you know, they still hold that decision against people, and it really does make an impact. And it's funny because, like you said, one of the, how I even heard about you guys was at BCPS has a returning citizens career fair. And I think that's one of the most awesome things, because there's 30, 40, 50 vendor organizations there, companies, organizations that are looking to give second chances. And it's a really cool event that I like to go to, because you get to see all these people who are trying to make better choices in life, who are trying to get themselves established. And unfortunately, they can be the smartest person, they can be well-spoken, best dressed, great knowledge, but some companies won't even give them the chance. So when I met you guys at that table, it was really impactful, and I didn't realize then that was going to make such an impact in my life, and it opened my eyes to a whole different perspective.
It's something, man. I think in my experience speaking to people, different rooms I'm in. I mean, the last week I was in a room with Chase Lenfest. I mean, you're talking about $1 billion people here, like this, and we're talking and having this conversation, and I gotta, clothes on. I look just like everybody in the room, kinda, and then they say that. They say, "Well, how'd you get into this?" And I said, "I spent 31 years in prison." One woman literally just had to put her drink down, and she said, didn't even know how to respond. To be in the room with folks and have these conversations, and then reveal that the reason why you're there is because you are a stakeholder in a different capacity. Like they don't know, and that's some of the beauty of it.
Yeah,
because when you want to prove to somebody that you can have a life sentence one day, and then the next day you can be in society, where the belief is from most in this field that you can't, because the field has been pretty much dominated. The conversation, the narrative has been pretty much dominated by folks that say all the studies, everything, all the money we put into this says that you can't be in society because society will be less safe. But now I'm standing here on the 46th floor, and I'm here with you while you're having your clams on a half shell, and you're talking to the guy.
Yeah.
The guy that you really don't even have a clue about, but you'll refer to him because maybe somewhere you read about something.
Yeah.
Now I'm standing here. Now what? And that conversation is really different after that. And it's usually always positive.
Ooh, yeah, I can imagine. You hit them. they wasn't ready. You hit them with the okie doke. You came in, spoke to them first, knew how they look, and they started respecting everything you're saying. And then you hit them with what your history was. So they definitely weren't prepared. So we're going to go into that next. We're going to dive into that because I think that's going to be that fits perfectly with the Forge's mission, especially positive imagery. So we'll jump back in. And like we talked about, and you mentioned it, and that stuck with me, is when you're in these rooms, I mean, look at you, cleaned up, you speak amazing, nice looking brother. When you're in this room speaking,
thanks,
yeah, you know. But when you're, I got you, bro. But when you're in these rooms, there's no way they can look at you and think you don't know your stuff, etc. But as I started to mention, it's a negative thing how people stigmatize you having a record. It's so crazy because if that never came up, they would have never thought that about you. And they would have never had, and no matter what, they still have that unconscious bias in the back of their head. And what I liked about watching you grow and put things out there, you had a speech, and I think I actually used a clip in my social media where you were speaking in front of the Capitol, I believe it was. And you had mentioned, this is what 31 years look like. This is what this looks like. Yes, this is what a lifer looks like.
I got that from somebody.
And that was amazing. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how any obstacles you may have faced because of your situation before. Can you talk about that for us?
When I was in Graterford Prison, I spent 31 years in state prison. Went in as a juvenile. I'm a juvenile lifer, and what that is if you got a homicide or were convicted of a homicide, if you were along for the ride with a homicide, second degree, it doesn't matter. As a juvenile and you got a life sentence, the Supreme Court said some years ago that it's an illegal sentence. And so it was up to the states how they wanted to deal with us. So in the state of Pennsylvania, we all went back to court to get resentenced. Okay. And so in that resentencing, some some things happen, whether you know there's all these mitigating issues or things that you've done while you were in prison. They take all these things into consideration when you get resentenced, or at least they should. And they determine whether or not, when you go back in front of the judge, they determine whether or not you should spend more time in prison, or you can walk out of prison sometime soon thereafter, after you see the parole board. So that was the process itself. So those are some of the mechanics of it. So I was fortunate enough to walk out of prison after 31 years. And so I'm on parole for the rest of my life. The speech that you're referring to is when somebody invited me to speak at the Capitol about trauma and about dual victimhood. And so when I was there, I spoke about that. I spoke about my trauma. I spoke about my life. I spoke about what it looks like to be experiencing trauma. And I forget exactly where it was going in that speech, man, but I know what you're referring to. But when I did refer to that, this is what a lifer looks like. There was a gentleman that was released, not a juvenile lifer, but an older gentleman. He was commuted from Graterford Prison years ago. And he came back into the prison and he made that statement. That is not mine originally. He came in and he said, you know what? This is what a lifer looks like. When he had his suit on and he was outside, somebody asked him about, his representation of someone with a life sentence. And he said, this is what a lifer looks like. I don't want you to see me with Browns on, with this kind of image of this prisoner with the pinstripes or whatever it is, this jumpsuit, this orange, which ain't the new black. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this right here. This is me representing for every person that is still incarcerated that has a life sentence, because they can be doing just what I'm doing. They could put the same gear on and they can represent in that kind of way. So when I say that, that's what it is. There's a reason why I look the way I look. It's not for pomp and circumstance. It's not all theatricality, man. That's not what it is. I want you to not feel that way when I walk in the room. I want you to be at ease, and then we'll talk. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's the response. And it moves the needle differently than if you come in there with a different presentation. I recognize that. I recognize the stigma that's attached, when you have a life sentence, when you have a homicide. It's like, oh, what did you do? I killed someone. What? That takes the air out of the room. But looking at somebody, Eb, you could have killed someone. I don't know. I never asked you.
Facts.
But I don't have to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In our conversations, you're in a particular position. You do particular things. You have a family. And you know what? I didn't know that about you, Ed. What does that have to do with your life? Because you're no less safe with me around you.
Right.
Right? Like, we have conversations, and in those conversations, all we do is build.
Yeah.
So to get to that place, it's difficult to get to that place when you have to lead in and say, this is my parole number. I'm on parole. I pay fines every month. This is what I do. This is this whole part of my life. Earlier today, I was in a halfway house talking to guys. And I was talking, and I said, how many of you guys have been in prison? How many of you guys have been on probation? This is the space we work in. Everybody raises their hand. I'm standing in front of them. If I never told them I was on parole, if I never told them I was in prison, do you think they're going to think that I was? No. But when I started talking about what it meant to be institutionalized, and I asked them about these stigmas and about all these issues and about the way you think, then they're like, oh, this is exactly the guy who should be talking to us. Because that lived experience, that understanding of what they're going through is something that nobody else is going to give it to them.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, in fact, I asked them, I said, how many of you in this room are institutionalized? One guy out of 30 raised his hand. I spoke to them for about 20 minutes, a half hour. I said, so now, how many of you think you're institutionalized? There was 2 guys that didn't raise their hand out of the 30. The messenger and how you convey the message is so important. That there's so many folks that need to hear a particular thing a particular way from a particular person. And if those messengers like myself are not in position we're going to miss an opportunity here. And so that was something that I recognize about being able to be in position. And what are you going to do when you're in position? What do you have to offer? Because there's times when you see people that are formerly incarcerated, they might not have anything to offer. Good guy, good woman.
Yeah.
But what do you got? Give me something. What were you thinking about in a particular way that you can go ahead and get me to appreciate or look at something differently? You got that? Let me try. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Let me try. Because there's a lot going on in these conversations that if you're held back, if you're, like you asked that question, what is it about going through what I went through that can hinder you or impede you from moving forward? Well, it's yourself. Because there's opportunities that you're going to get, but what are you going to do with them? That was another thing I said to these gentlemen. I said, what can you do? People ask me all the time, AE, man, can you give me a job? AE, man, I'm trying to do this. And I said, well, what can you do? I mean, can you do something like culinary? Can you cook? Are you a plumber? Like what skill you do? Can you train people? So the thing that can hold you back is you. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the institutions that we're in, any more so than the institution that you keep yourself in. It's not a physical place, but that's a whole other thing. But I mean, we get into that, but I'm saying that was for me the thing when I think about it, what is really going to impede you from being your best self? It's just you, man, and your thought process.
Well, wow, you said a lot.
I'm sorry.
Good stuff. No, very good stuff.
I know the segments are a particular time.
Nah, good stuff, bro. Good stuff. But what I was listening and what's going through my head is how your message actually can translate to a lot of the young men out here, even without a record, especially young brothers. Like, there's just stigma when a young black man walks in the room. And I try to talk to even my kids about that, talk to other kids about that. And I understand, I mean, when we were young, we didn't dress the same way we dress now, but it's important that these young men even get the same message you had. Let these people, the way you look, the way you carry yourself can actually help bring down some tension, some walls.
No question, man.
And they don't understand that. And again, I'm not saying these young men should be walking around in shirt and tie every day, but pull your pants up, but learn to speak, learn to communicate, learn to taper off your vulgar language.
But how do you learn that though?
Correct.
I'm saying like that's something that I know you have to offer, right? Like I know that. How does that happen? But we're talking about exposure.
Yes.
And to expose somebody to something different.
Yep.
That's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about being institutionalized. It's a thought process, right? And it's a place that you don't realize you're in until you're out of it. So if I'm talking or representing in a particular way, until you take me somewhere else out of that environment where it's cool to talk that way, then I'm not going to understand what it's like to speak or listen to something different, because nobody represented anything different to me. I'm in the same environment. Take me out of that. Expose me to something. Take me to the beach, man, and let me see what it looks like for where the land meets the water. Like, let me see, and let's talk about that. How do you feel when you're here? Like that. Let's get out of the city. Let's go somewhere different.
See new things, yes.
Let's see new things. And then, when you're experiencing those new things, then the onus is on you to introduce new language and be more creative with it while you're there. Yep. You do it with your kids.
Oh, yeah. And it's true. You have to see more to want more. Because if you don't see anything else, you don't even understand half of it exists out there. So it's, I'm going to jump, I ain't going to lie. I want to get back into the institutionalized thing that you said. That's very interesting to me. And how you said, I love that you said it's not a physical place.
No, man. No.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
That's that for me is a game changer. the understanding of what it means to be institutionalized and how it can really impede your process and success. And so when I walk out of prison and I have all these feelings and I don't realize that they're all connected to where I was for the last 31 years, when I was ready to confront somebody, when I felt anxiety about how I'm supposed to handle a situation, it was all based on where I was. It was all based on a mode of thinking, a model. Like, this is how I think because this is what's going to happen. This is the establishment that I'm in. But it was a routine of thinking. It was how I thought through.
Can you give us like an example of what that looks like?
I think that when I would get up in the morning, there's times that I do a particular thing. Everybody that I talk to now that was formerly incarcerated, there's a bunch of us out here that I know, everybody's up at 6 a.m, right? There's times when I would call somebody. I'd be with somebody and I call I'd have a point. We'd say something like, man, I'd say, man, you crazy. I said, let me, you know what? And they'd say, who you calling at 1 a.m? Yo, what's up, man? Yeah. And the guy's right there. And they're like, what? I said, it's my man. We don't sleep.
Yeah.
And that right there is an institutionalized way of thinking, because when you get out of prison after serving a long time, you don't sleep because you feel like you're going to miss something. and so when I talk to somebody, I say, I don't sleep because you feel like you're going to miss something. Hey, look, damn, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. But you know who doesn't know that? Somebody who didn't experience that. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is. You can't know what it's like to think in a particularly regimented way if you never experienced that regimented thought process or regimented routine where it contributes to the thought process. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with where you are. In a physical structure. Yeah. It's like, so it can be, okay, you get up, go to work every day, you're with your wife, you got the kids, you do particular things in a particular way, and you think in a way. Every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever you got to do, you got to get the trash ready. You do things in a regimented way. You're institutionalized, Eb. I'm sorry to tell you.
No, right? I feel you.
But that's what it is. And so if you're taken out of that environment, right, and put into a different environment, let's say you got deployed tomorrow and now you're overseas for something. You're like, what am I doing here? I'm thinking you're still there in overseas somewhere and you're thinking about taking the trash out on Wednesday. even though you're 13 hours away from taking the trash out.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But you're thinking about your son's football practice and you're thinking about your wife going to work and setting this up. And you're thinking, you can't stop thinking about it until you become conscious in a different way of a different mode of living, in a different framework, in a different mindset. But unless you make a conscious effort to appreciate what is new, you're going to struggle with staying in that place of what is old. And you won't get rid of it. And it's a comfortable place because you're so used to it. And it can keep you stagnated. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with working out. You get used to working out and you just get, oh man, I'm addicted. Every morning you get up and you work out, you do this thing and you're in it. And then when you don't work out, you're like, man, I don't even feel right. Because you just program yourself. And it can be good, it can be bad. And so a lot of times when we experience it in the criminal justice system, it's really just primarily negative because it doesn't allow you to see yourself with a sense of agency in this world. You can't come out in this world after long-term incarceration and appreciate your sense of agency out here because you might not be voting. You got problems getting housing. You have issues having to do with work. You can't really feel like a citizen in that kind of way. You still feel disenfranchised. You still feel marginalized in that way. And so to appreciate being institutionalized and all that comes with it, there's so many barriers, man. There's so many barriers that when it has to do with being in prison for a long time, that's a way different kind of institutionalization. That's an oppressive beatdown.
All right. Well, wow, that was deep. And, when I'm thinking about it's being institutionalized, I think you can, sort of like you said, people can be institutionalized without even going to prison. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look into that a little deeper. That's going to be something that we elaborate on too. Mm-hmm. So we'll jump right back into that. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about being institutionalized, there's things that are considered institutions. One of them is the institution of marriage.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. But what do you think about that? When
would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, we can still talk about it though. Like, what do you think when they say the institution of marriage? Because when you think about institutionalized the way you're putting it, and then you look at the institution of marriage, is it same thing? It's just a way of thinking? Elaborate on that for us. What do you feel about that?
Well, I would say the institution of marriage is something that should be nothing but positive, right? What I'm talking about is being in prison specifically, which is really negative. So there is a dichotomy there.
Yeah.
But there is something that you choose somebody to be with, you make choices, and you live in a particular way, and you do things that you agree, we're going to do it this way. And so you ascribe to a particular framework, and you say, we're going to work within this framework, and we're going to do this. And so you create an institution of your own, and there's a plan, and you work through it, and this is how you do it. So it can have a really positive connotation, and it can be positive. And there's plenty of nuanced stuff going on in marriage that I'm sure you're way more aware of than I am.
Yeah.
But there are things that I think have a negative connotation. There are things that don't have to be all positive. They don't have to be all negative. It's different.
Yeah.
But it can be, and that's one of the things about prison. Like, you can get to a point where it's like, it is what you make it. And that's when I think in your evolution personally, you can work within an institution, within an institutionalized way of thinking, where you recognize that you think a particular way. And then you can say, you know what, this is not good for me. Self-reflection, when you're able to take inventory and say, this is not good for me. I need to change this. I need to incorporate something new. Again, about being exposed to something new. As an adult, you need to take it upon yourself sometimes to say, I need to incorporate some new stuff in my life. This isn't working. Or if you got good folks around you, they'll help you with that. Like your wife would, hey, babe, you need to,
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's sort of like, so is there things that, for instance, with you, were there things that you learned about yourself?
Absolutely.
While you were in prison, and you actually could take something good from it? Can you tell us, is there some things that you learned that, like I said, a lot of times the connotation that comes with institutionalized is negative, especially if you're coming from prison.
Right.
But what can you tell us that you learned good, that you still maybe carry with you as a way of thinking or a way of discipline, things like that?
Yeah, one of the first thing that comes to my mind is recognizing individuals and not generalizing and putting everybody into the same boat. So I can't stay in prison, right? Just to keep it in that context. But that doesn't mean that every guard or every administrator in the prison I can't stand. For a while, it's like I hate everybody and I'm angry and I see everybody as a representation of the thing that is against me.
Okay.
Completely self-destructive, man. Completely destroyed me, because all it did was create in me this angry place. And in that anger was just an excuse, or even at times a mechanism to act out and to express myself in a way that was just counterproductive to anything that was going to be progressive. I couldn't do anything because I saw everybody against me, and that was something that I had to appreciate folks in their individuality, which is the way I wanted them to see me. And one of the things that somebody told me before, she said to me, she said, She said, Erik, if you don't want to be compared to other people, then stop comparing yourself to other people. Ooh. Because I want people to see me differently.
That was powerful.
I want you to see me differently. Yeah, I walk around with that. I want you to see me differently. Okay, but when you walk in and they card that person, or they don't charge that person an entrance fee or a cover charge, and they look at you and they say, hey man, give me $10. What do you say? Well, you didn't charge them $10. No, I don't. I just say, all right, man. I don't want you to compare. And so it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough because there's going to be times when you're going to be treated a different way. It's like, you know what? Okay, man. I'm not everybody. I'm not him. I'm not you. We do things differently. I can't see everybody the same, man. And I don't want you to see me the same. So cool. Treat me different. And that's the thing that I really think in any kind of understanding you have of, like we're talking about institutionalized, in any kind of understanding you have about where you are in this world, you have to have an understanding of your own sense of self-agency. Who am I? Like in an institution of marriage, you have a partner, you're a couple, but who are you individually? Where are you in this world? Oh, well, the McNeils are y'all, and that's your identity in that institution. Okay, but Ebony is Ebony. And so for me, understanding who I am walking out of prison after all that time, I had to get a good understanding of who I am, not looking at institutions, not looking at people in generalities. I had to engage people where they are. But in that process, in my evolution, I had to understand where I am too. Am I learning? What am I incorporating? There's a lot in that process.
Did you learn more about yourself and your own self-agency while you were still in, or did you learn a lot of it when you got out? Or was learning that what helped you get out?
It's a different kind of learning, because to be liberated from prison after all that time, there's a kind of elephant off of you. It is literally something, Eb, that you can feel. You feel lighter. You feel less anxiety, less stress in a different way. You stress about things, but stressing in prison, being oppressed, is a different kind of stress. And so to be able to learn and incorporate things without all that weighing on you, it's totally different. Now you're way more open. You could be open inside, man. And I went to college. I took advantage of part-time studies from Villanova, went through Temple, came in there with a criminal justice course. I went through there, Montgomery County. I took advantage of a lot, facilitated programs, did a lot. So I was open. But to be out of prison, it's a different kind of open. Like, you take it for granted. People walking around take it for granted. But you walk out, and I say something about going down to where the land meets the water, and I might stand there and vibe on that in unbelievably different ways than somebody who just takes the beach for granted. I never thought I'd see the beach again. And I'm standing here. And man, I love that little seagull, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Look at that seagull, man. I have a different appreciation. So I have a different appreciation for learning. I have a different appreciation for incorporating things. I'm open. People say, how you doing, man? I say, man, I'm open. What? It's weird. But no, I'm open, man. What do you got? Give me something. And so it is different being out and learning. There are things, especially in relationships and learning about self, that I'm totally tuned into. And it's not always easy, and it's not always pretty, to learn about yourself in ways that it takes somebody else to help you to learn about yourself. It's like, man, we go through life, man, I could do this on my own. Man, bro.
Nah, you can't do that. Max, you can't do that.
I attribute anything that I got going on to people that I know. Yeah. It's not me, man. It's all my friends. It's all family. It's love that I get, that I just figure, and they give me love, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You love me, right? Yeah, I love you, man. We got you. Okay, I'm gonna go do this thing. I got you. Or they got my best interest in mind. Yeah, that's key. when somebody pauses, do you pause with them, or you just keep going?
That's deep. A lot of
it.
people want to keep going because they don't want to hear when somebody actually has their best interest in mind. They take it personal.
Yeah, that's something that anything I attribute, man, I attribute to the people around me. That's one of the things you see when people do anything successful, I think. And that's when somebody gets up on stage and they get a Grammy or an Emmy or something. First thing they do is thank the Lord, and then they thank everybody around them. I used to be like, what are you thanking everybody for? You did it.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, then I come to realize you can't get anywhere without people that love you, man. Right.
Yes.
That's it.
Relationships are key in life.
Relationships are key, man. We're sitting here doing a particular thing right now based on the fact that we respect and appreciate one another, man.
Yes.
That's it. And so the more people you have in your life like that, the more people I put in my life like that, they help me stay in that good place. And then I can learn. That's where I can really thrive. One of my favorite books, man, is The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. Talks about Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, two folks that are super smart in their own respect. But the one thing they said is that they really only like themselves when they get together. And they said, I love who I become when I'm in the room with this guy. I'm so creative. I'm something else. And they would seek each other out, and then it just turned into something amazing. Man, who do we have in our lives like that?
Wow.
You can't wait to get around them.
Sure, I might have to go get that book. That's deep.
The Undoing Project. Great book, man. Great book. It's in the back of my truck. I'll give it to you.
Oh, appreciate that. So a lot of what I'm hearing sounds like you had a lot of decisions to make to get to being where you are, because you could have easily made the decision to the things you learn to shun them. A lot of men, a lot of young men do that. Somebody does try to show them a different way, and they make a decision. I'm gonna stick with, like you said, what's comfortable. I'm gonna stick with, it's easier. Usually, it's also easier. If someone's trying to show you something new, it takes you out of a comfortable space. And it's easier to stay where you were and then make excuses. So like with you, I'm sure it would have been easy for you to say, well, everything's against me. I was in jail 31 years, et cetera, and use that as an excuse to either go back, not grow, be stuck in your ways. What decisions did you have to make to say, you know what, I'm going to be who I am now? I know I'm better than that. What decisions did you have to make? Like, what things did you have to really maybe get rid of or make a hard stance on?
If there were some specifics that come to mind, it would have to be the people that I want to be around. And in those opportunities where I could be around particular people, I made it a point to gravitate towards them. And that wasn't folks that were like-minded folks. Like, it was the people that weren't thinking like me. Because the people who were thinking like me were probably still institutionalized, probably in that space.
Okay.
So one of the decisions that I really made was to not want to be in that space. Oh, we're having a get together with, formerly incarcerated people. Okay, I'll be there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't something that really felt good to me, because it took me back into that kind of mindset, that feeling. So one decision would be for me to separate myself from the things that I don't want to feel anymore. The feelings are like what you're talking about. Like, I remember reading the book, The Hidden Brain, and it talks about how our brain is set on default pretty much to make ourselves feel comfortable. When you're chilly, you put a sweater on.
Yeah.
That's how we are. We're set up to feel comfortable. And so in that comfortable place, you're not going to grow. And you're just going to stay stagnant. You'll be all right, but you won't make any money. You won't make any new friends. You won't make any progress. And so that's one of the things that I realized. I can't stay in this space because it's not productive. In that space that I've been in for so long, it's not productive. So I put myself around new people, and I stayed open. What do I know? I had a skill set I was good with my hands, power tools. I was in the carpenter shop when I was in prison. I got out and I started working in that space. But when I work in that space, you know, I'm up and down a ladder at 6 a.m. Man, I need to work smarter, not harder. I went to college. What am I doing? Need to move away from that. Something that I felt was good for me. I'm making money. I'm paying my bills. Wasn't really what I should have been doing, but it was comfortable. I'm getting up. I'm doing it. No problem. But nah, man, get out of this. This is the thing that entrepreneurs do. It's what makes them successful entrepreneurs. They take it. They do it. They're like, man, if I'm just going to make this money, work for this guy for 25 years, you know, let me go do this. But it's not a comfortable place to be. It's a conflicting place, actually.
Yeah.
You got to go against what it says. This is what I should. No. You got to get out of that. That was hard for me in terms of being institutionalized and really getting away from stuff. It's like a really drastic move to get away from something that's comfortable. Because, man, this is comfortable, but for so long I was uncomfortable. So, man, I need to stay in this space. Nah, you don't, man. Get out of that. You can do it. Get out of that too. That's something that for me, I can identify, you know, as helping me progress and move, you know, out of that.
I like that because it's a different perspective. You know, almost removing what makes you comfortable. Most people don't do that. Most people will say, okay, I want to keep adding. Okay, I like doing this, but I'll add in reading. I'll add in things that are positive, but they keep adding on instead of realizing eventually you're going to run out of stuff to add on. You got to start removing. And you got to make a space for this new good stuff to fill. And it was pretty interesting hearing you say that when you said, like, you came out, you had done carpentry while you were in prison, came out, got a job right in that, and then realized, nah, I can do more. And that's not a mindset that a lot of people, even right out of college, have. You know, they come out, they go to school for what they get a job what they went to school for, because it's easy. Because usually that's what you're gifted in. I'm gifted in math, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gifted in this, I'm gonna do this. Versus saying, you know what? But I'm doing what's comfortable. Right. Let me dive in and do something else. And that is, like you said, that's where you grow. You know what I mean? Like, it's very impressive to hear that, especially, like you said, when you're making these decisions coming out of prison, 31 years, a lot of obstacles. It was great to hear. But I'm going to be honest with you, man. I could technically go on all day with you. Real talk. Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot we didn't even get into.
Yeah, there's a lot we didn't even get into. But, you know,
part 2.
Yep. Part 2. We will have you back as long as you're willing to come back. We will have you back.
What is that? 10-2?
Yeah, 10.2.
10.2.
Yeah, but honestly,
I love it, man. I love talking to you, man. You know, I think you're a class act, man.
Well, I appreciate that, bro. And keep being you, because you are very unique and it's awesome to see. And again, that's why I like the fact that we formed the friendship. I like being able to pay attention. I like when we talk. So thanks for coming on, man. I know it took some time out of your busy schedule. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you, bro. Big time, man. I appreciate you, bro. We'll have you back soon. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed this last episode. If you have, please check back and check our previous episodes. Also, make sure you watch it, make sure you like it, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Here at The Forge Focus, we just want to make sure that we're sending out positive vibes and great information from men in the community who can affect it and affect society as a whole. So again, please stay tuned. We got some more great things coming up for you. Prepare to be forged.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and, more importantly, learned something that can affect your perspective on yourself and manhood as a whole. If you have found the value that we expect that you did, we encourage you to hit the like and subscribe button and share this video. Spread the word and tell anyone in your life who can benefit. We'll see you on the next episode. Prepare to be forged.